9 years ago, my wife and I arrived in Cleveland, and we didn't know what to expect. I heard of NCSY when I was a kid, but it was a lot changed in the time in between. My first event, my first day in Cleveland, we were ushered into the annual barbecue which used to be held in Judy and Maury Weiss's backyard. I'm sure a lot of you were there, probably remember it. That's why a lot of you were here. A lot of good memories years ago. And I remember that I was completely overwhelmed trying to meet people and learn. I was there to hang out with teens and to learn about Judaism with teenagers, and I met all these hundreds of people from Cleveland, and I was overwhelmed. That was 9 years ago. And I find myself tonight, here now, still completely overwhelmed. Being a part of NCSY for 9 years has offered me the opportunity to learn a lot. And one of the things that I truly appreciate having learned is that my first day in NCSY, my first day in Cleveland, having been at this event, was really the best way to start my experience. There are a lot of stories printed around from the teens in Cleveland who have grown. And it has been the volunteers in the community that have stepped up and supported them and learned with them and invited them in for Shabbos that have made that happen. I am in really awe and complete appreciation for everyone who helped us set this up tonight, and for everyone who came out to show really the encouragement. Rabbi T and his wife and my wife and I, we really work tirelessly at trying to get teens to grow in Judaism, and to know that all of you guys care enough to come out tonight really means a lot to us. Thank you so much for coming. In this week's Parsha, there's an amazing idea. The pasuk says, "Lo sires shorachecha oes seo nidachem v'salamta mehem hashev tishivim lachecha." If you see your neighbor that they have an animal that ran away, if you see that your neighbor has some kind of possession, you find it on the street, you are not allowed to look away and move on with your day. You have to return it. Judaism is an amazing religion. We know that the Torah tells us that we can't kill and that we can't steal, a lot of things that make sense to everyone. But if you turn away from a wallet that you find on the ground and you don't go out of your way to find out who it belongs to, you're breaking a law that's just as severe. The amazing morality of the Torah and Judaism to tell us how far we have to go to help our brothers. Rabbi T and I run around all week to public schools and private schools and to Starbucks, and we find constantly teenagers that have lost their path to Judaism. We find teens that have lost their connection to spirituality. And if the Torah wants us to return lost objects, an ox that ran away and a goat that ran away and a dog, a shirt that we find, how much more so are we obliged to help people find their neshamas that they're not in touch with? On behalf of my wife and Rabbi T and Mrs. T, we want to thank you all for coming and being the backbone of NCSY and helping us reach hundreds of teens throughout the years. It is because of your support that we're able to do it. And together we fulfill this mitzvah of Ashevosa to bring back the Jewish teenagers to their culture and their people and their community and their growth. Thank you so much for allowing it to happen. One of my favorite parts of my job in NCSY, despite the fact that I have to leave my home for a month, which is incredibly difficult, the only reason why I would do such a thing is because I get to spend time with amazing teens in Israel. This summer we took 21 teens from Cleveland on TJJ. Back in the day there were 5 or 6 and then 11. 16, 17, now 21. In the future we hope to fill a whole bus of kids of TJJ. There are 50 teens from Cleveland on all the summer programs with NCSY. One of those amazing teens that was with us this past summer really blew us away at how much he connected with Israel and his own spirituality. So I invite to say a few words, Mr. Isaac Weiss.
Hi everyone. My name is Isaac Weiss, and I'm just a regular Jewish teenager at Shaker Heights High School. At least I used to be, before I went on TJJ this past summer, the best summer of my life. Before I go on, I need to thank my parents for not just allowing me to go on TJJ this summer, but for encouraging me to do so. Mom and Dad, you have always been amazing role models for me, and especially in the area of Jewish identity. I've never known that more than I do now. Thank you, Mom and Dad. When Rabbi REA asked me if I would say a few words about this event about my Jewish growth, I was at a loss. How could I tell everyone how inspiring, memorable, and life-changing my experience was this summer on TJJ? No matter how hard I tried, putting my trip into words seemed impossible. It is an experience where I can truly say you had to be there. For those of you who don't know, TJJ stands for the Jerusalem Journey. It is an incredible month-long trip to Israel where we travel throughout our homeland, hiking, swimming, and journeying both to the heart of Israel and Jerusalem, as well as striving to find the heart of our own Jewish identity. In the 4 short weeks of TJJ, we built a real family out of 40 Jewish teens on the foundation of Jewish growth, learning Torah, and supporting one another. As I said, before this trip, I was a regular Jewish teenager at Shaker Heights High School. I was just like most Jewish teens I know. I took pride in Jewish culture, but after Sunday school and my bar mitzvah, I disconnected. I forgot that it was a religion and a relationship that could make my life more meaningful. I went on TJJ because 2 of my good friends pushed me enough that I finally said yes. I wanted to go to Israel and I wanted to have a fun time. I didn't realize that the staff that would spend the next month with me would become the people I would aspire to emulate. I didn't realize that the 39 other teens who went on TJJ with me would become my brothers and sisters in a pursuit of connecting to our Jewish identity. I didn't realize that I would connect with over 40 buses and 1,400 other Jewish teens at Yom NCSY and become part of a huge community. I want to tell you one story about something that happened to me this summer that I will truly never forget. It was the last week of the trip, and I decided to attempt to fast the entire day of Tisha B'Av for the first time in my life, obviously with permission from my parents. It was a long day, and our advisors were encouraging us to drink to make sure that we were healthy before attempting to be spiritual. I was tired and thirsty, but as the end of the day grew near and it got darker around us, I found myself sitting with hundreds upon hundreds of other Jews at the kotel singing to God. The energy was palpable, and we were so proud to be Jewish and to be in Israel. The next thing I knew, I was looking up into the sky trying to figure out what happened. While we were singing, I'm Eshkachach Yerushalayim, if I forget Jerusalem, I fainted, and luckily, my friend from TJJ caught me and lowered me onto the ground. The paramedics were nearby and ran over to me. They helped me sit up and offered me a juice box. I guess they expected me to just drink the juice because they seemed a little shocked when I first reciting the blessing, Shahakol Niyeh Bidvaro. They brought me over to the ambulance just to make sure I was okay. As the female paramedic helped me onto the vehicle, she said to me, "Hey, I was on TJJ too, just 3 years ago. Isn't that amazing?" I was blown away. Here I was in my homeland, and the random Israeli paramedic used to be just like me, a regular Jewish teen. I then sat in the ambulance as they monitored my heartbeat and my breathing for a few minutes. The head paramedic's name was Akiva. He was wearing a kippah on his head, and he spoke Hebrew very quickly. I didn't realize that he was actually American until he turned to me right before I got off the ambulance to get back on the bus. "Isaac," he said, "I want you to know something. 24 years ago, I went to Israel with NCSY. When I got back to America, my family asked me, 'Are you happy to be home?' I looked at them and said, 'I'm not home. Israel is my home.' I walked away from that experience knowing 3 things very clearly. If you're about to faint, make sure you're standing next to someone who is willing to catch you. 2, if an Israeli paramedic can be a TJJ alumni, then I have much more potential than I thought. I'm not just some regular Jewish teen. 3, if I want my Judaism to be part of my life and to matter, then I have to be involved in NCSY. If you would have told me 2 months ago that I would be putting on tefillin and praying on a daily basis, I would have called you absolutely crazy. The same mitzvah that I did once at my bar mitzvah and never again? Not likely. If you would have told me 2 months ago that I would be walking into a school every day as one of the only Jews who wear a kippah, I would have laughed at you. TJJ helped me embrace the fact that I want to be Jewish. I want people to see that I'm different and that I'm Jewish. I want people to ask me, why? Because now I know how to answer that question. Today, I aspire to be a leader in NCSY and in the Jewish community. I aspire to continue to learn Torah and grow as a Jew. I know today that I want to go to yeshiva when I graduate from high school. And for all this, I have to thank my parents, NCSY, and all of you. Thank you for helping me become so full of love for Israel, the Jewish people, myself, and Hashem. Thank you. NCSY could not inspire the Jewish future in a vacuum. Only when working with teens and parents can NCSY help teens connect to their Jewish identity and grow in a healthy and productive way. NCSY partners with great organizations like the Cleveland Jewish Federation, the JECC, the Mandel School and Fuchs Mizrahi School, Esha Torah, Chabad, B'nai Akiva, and others. One organization close to me is JFX, the Jewish Family Experience. I would like to invite Maura Kim Farkas up to introduce our next speaker, and while you're on your way, I can express my distinct appreciation to the Kovals, and especially Kim, for always encouraging us to get involved in NCSY. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kim Farkas, and I'm a teacher at the Mandel School, and I work with JFX running a program called Mini Musser. At Mini Musser, dozens of teens get together at our home on a weekly basis to learn and grow together. But the most significant Jewish growth happens with our teens when we become involved with NCSY. Over the years, we have seen so many teens grow up and become connected to their Jewish identity in different ways. Our next speaker is someone that we've watched grow literally since she was a little girl. We are so proud of the growth and leadership of Katie Dinner. Please come.
1, 2. You see the way that I am dressed and assume that I am observant. 3, 4. You see some of my Jewish friends and assume that connecting to Shabbos is natural to me. You heard that I'm going to seminary, so you assume I already have the skills I need to study. 5, 6. You heard that I'm going to seminary, so you assume I already have the skills I need to study and learn more about Judaism. 7. You have just created your first impression of me. Surprisingly, it only takes 7 seconds to create a first impression. So, what is your first impression of me? What about NCSY? Or of a girl who is so passionate about her Judaism, maybe you think that this has always been so obvious to me. Before I can tell you about my true Jewish identity, I want to give you a synopsis of my journey. I attended a Jewish day school from 3rd to 8th grade and never really knew where I stood with my Judaism. My family regularly attended JFX Sunday School and all of their events and Shabbatons. As I began learning for my bat mitzvah with Alyssa Friedner, I became more familiar with NCSY. I slowly started attending some more events with my friends. The more events I went to with NCSY, the more curious I became about who I was as a Jew and what my beliefs were. When I began high school at Laurel, I quickly realized how important my Jewish identity was, and I wanted to surround myself with more Jewish people. While being involved in NCSY, I can recall so many factors that have contributed to my Jewish identity today. Shabbatons, being a part of leadership on regional board, and so many others. But what I really want to share with you tonight are the 2 best parts of NCSY that have helped me understand my Jewish identity. The number 1 reason I'm going to save for last. The second best part of NCSY's summer programs. I'm not sure if you've heard the slogan, best summer ever, but it's definitely true. After attending an Israeli culture club run by NCSY, I was encouraged to go on TJJ. As the summer was arriving, a war broke out and we were not able to go to Israel. Instead, NCSY shifted and planned a fun trip to the West Coast through Arizona and California. I had an amazing time and insisted on attending the real TJJ the following summer. The next year, I went on TJJ and can't begin to describe the inspiration from my advisors, friends, and rabbis. I traveled all over the country and had an amazing time, while I was able to learn more about Judaism and how to grow at my own pace. But that brings me to the best part of NCSY and what has meant the most to me, and it's what I realized in my 3rd summer in NCSY. For my 3rd summer, I decided that I wasn't going to go on another NCSY summer program. So, I walk into the Friedner's home, and Rabbi Aryeh shows me a picture of a group of my friends all loading the bus in Israel, about to have an amazing time. He asked me how I felt about my decision to not go to Israel that summer, and I regretted it immediately. I quickly told him that I would go on any program that hasn't started yet, but it didn't end up working out. What happened instead became much more rewarding. That summer, I spent every day with Alyssa Friedner, running a camp for 4-year-olds. I watched Alyssa put endless hours into preparing for the camp and making sure every kid had an amazing day. She was patient, understanding, and loving, as if these kids in the camp were her own. These 4-year-olds were filled with ruach, energy, and love for Hashem, which is something I wasn't used to and was so inspired by. I learned more about myself running this camp that I could have done anywhere else. And that's when I realized the best part of NCSY were my role models. The person who got me to go on TJJ in the first place was the NCSY staff member who ran the Israeli Culture Club in my school, DL11. After the summer at the 4-year-old camp, I began learning with Mrs. T, otherwise known as Alana Tenenbaum, every week so I could prepare myself to be able to go to seminary and learn Torah every day. It was these strong Jewish women and the lessons I learned from listening to them and watching them that has helped me understand who I want to be. As the time for applying to colleges came around, I had no question that I wanted to be in Israel. Next week, I will be starting at Tiferet in Ramat Beit Shemesh. Thanks to Alyssa and Mrs. T, I feel comfortable that I will fit in side by side with the students who have formerly been studying about Judaism their whole lives. It took me a little longer than 7 seconds to realize that NCSY is more than just having fun, meeting people, summer programs, and Shabbatons. It's a culture and community that has led me to find my true self. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you very much. I'm feeling very tall tonight. My name is Sally Friedman. I'm coming from the regional office, and I've been doing this for a couple of years, and then some. And one of the favorite questions that I get asked all the time is, "You still do NCSY?" As if like the tone insinuates that like there's something wrong with that. I don't know if that is a very normal question. Maury, does anybody ever ask you, do you still do American greetings? Your wife does. Very good. Only your wife. So maybe I have a chip on my shoulder, but I feel compelled to answer why I do NCSY still. And maybe because I want you to understand why you still support NCSY. But I have 4 very, very quick reasons. Number one is there's a sense of urgency. Just not to bore you with statistics, but today there's a statistic that more than half of Jewish teenagers, the families do not even make a bar or a bar mitzvah. And of the half that do, 3 years after their bar mitzvah, they can't study them because they can't find them. They're totally disconnected from anything. And that is the sense of urgency, that we know that we can make a difference. We see it, we experience it, and we know it, and that's why we do this. Reason number 2 is when you get involved with teenagers like Katie and like Isaac, it is invigorating. It is absolutely invigorating. And I have to tell you something that just happened yesterday. We received a donation, a very, very generous donation of $1,800 from someone we had never met and never asked for a donation from. And we couldn't figure out why. And then we found out the reason why, and that was because they had an NCSY at their house for Shabbos. And that inspired them on their own to take the initiative and just sign up for this event and contribute very generously. So if anybody has some extra money, $1,800 jingling in their pocket, please invite an NCSY kid to your house for Shabbos. Number 3, and that is because I have the distinct pleasure of working every day with Ilana and Menachem and Aryeh and Alyssa, some of the most passionate and inspired and talented and creative and selfless people you ever meet. I hope Cleveland knows how lucky they are. This does not happen from coast to coast. Such an incredible, incredible team. And third, am I up to 4? I'm up to 4. I'm having a Rick Perry moment. And number 4, and that is you. Working with you who are the loyal supporters that enable us, that empower us, that make this all possible. It is amazing, and I'm going to try to do this by heart, but the pillar families of NCSY, I'll try to do that ABC order in my mind. The Dinners and the Halperns and the Jaffas and the Klein, thank you for lining that up so alphabetically well. The Malzmachers, the Penns, the Siemens, and the Weiss family, especially enable us and empower us to do this amazing, amazing work. We just simply do not have the words to express our thanks to those families who are the pillars of NCSY. And as Rabbi Aryeh mentioned, we haven't done this in a couple years, and to thank tonight's hosts. They are the amazing, amazing group of people, Chani and Nati and Jennifer and Grant. I shouldn't do this. I should know by now. I can't do this. And Shayna and Sam, the amazing hostess. This is such a beautiful evening. It's a dry evening. It's a special evening, and we are so grateful to them for. Literally, I came here at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and Jennifer was here working. It's just amazing how much work that went into this, and we're very grateful. And NCSY is all about Shabbos, so we want to present them something for their Shabbos table. If I can ask you if you could please join us here to present you, Menachem and Aryeh, if you could please join us. Sam, let's go. Krashevsky's dinners and the Kleins. Let's go. Dinner. One more little gift here. Sam and Shayna go back many years to the previous millennium, and on a bus, on an NCSY bus in NCSY many years ago. They are what we call an NCSY shidduch, and since NCSY is the #1 producer of pajamas, we brought you. I met my bus shirt in NCSY. And all those who met their Bashert and NCSY, if you want to raise your hand. Okay, let's go. Raise all the NCSY shidduchim in the room. Okay. Rabbi Weil included. Introducing our next speaker and the Malzmachers. Okay. Introducing our next speaker is one of our great friends. NCSY is just a sliver of what the Weiss family does, and the impact that they have had changing lives and impacting, transforming the landscape of America is just one little piece, and they do so much. Thank you.
Whenever a speaker introduces me and does say some very kind things, I feel uncomfortable. So I start walking up a little early, and when I get about to halfway, it occurs to me that I may not be the one he's introducing. So one has to be very careful about these things. This is an amazing organization. I've been coming to these affairs and others now for quite a few years. And I'm in awe when I see the number of young men and women who have been influenced by NCSY. It's an amazing work that's being done in our community and throughout the country. And while we hear statistics that trouble us greatly and should trouble us greatly, this is one organization that's doing an amazing job. And you know, while Rabbi Aryeh and Rabbi T and Rabbi Friedman are out there thanking everybody, do join me in thanking them for the amazing work that they do. This would not be the community without them. So we're terribly indebted to them. I have the privilege of introducing, well, it's a treat for you because he's an amazing speaker, and I have the privilege of introducing him because he's also mine and my wife Judy's friend, and we're privileged to have him here. I could tell you many things about him, where he went to school, where he got his MBA, where he got his smicha. He's a wonderful father. He's a wonderful husband, great family person. He does some fantastic work. He's rarely ever home. He's continuously on the road doing these kinds of things and speaking at events. But let me tell you about one event that just stands out in my mind as I think about introducing Rabbi Stephen Weil. Judy and I go to APAC. APAC, for those of you who don't know, and I don't mean to put another plug in for another organization, is probably one of the finest Jewish organizations around. They do amazing work. But I used to watch for years. Rabbi Weil would come there with this huge contingent from California. They would leave after Shabbat and get to Washington Sunday morning, and by then half his crew was half wiped out. They were tired, dragging through. So he started something where he creates a Shabbaton. They come there now on Thursday or Friday morning, and they spend Shabbat in Washington. This has grown to be the most amazing thing. There are some 1,500 people who show up now for Shabbat to hear Rabbi Weil speak, and the programs that he puts together. Judy and I are moved by APEC, but we go there for Shabbat because he does this amazing piece of work. So not only is he involved with NCSY and the OUN doing phenomenal work there, he does it on behalf of Jewish people everywhere. So it is a privilege for me and for us, and for me to introduce Rabbi Stephen Weil for this group. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Birshus, the Rabbanim here, Rabbi Bernstein, Rebbetzin Bernstein. Rabbi Bernstein was our family rabbi. We're German Jewish refugees who escaped in 1939 and settled. We're in the cattle business. We buy and sell livestock. And the closest Jewish city to where I grew up was Buffalo. And Rabbi Bernstein was our rabbi, and he nurtured our family before coming to Cleveland. And as well, Birshus, Rabbi and Rebbetzin Spiegler, who are here. Really one of the young superstar rabbis in America, Rabbi Ari Spiegler. An honor to be with you. The all-star team that you have here with the Friedners and the Tenenbaums, twice a year we bring all of our staff throughout the length and breadth of North America. We bring them together. They don't learn that much from us with the seminars that we do, but they learn a lot more from each other through networking. And the gold standard that Rabbi Tzali Friedman, when he established real quality, he has this amazing knack to find special, talented young couples for Columbus, for Pittsburgh, for Detroit. But he put together here in Cleveland, la creme de la creme. And that is the Friedners and the Tenenbaums. And it's an honor to be associated with your families. I want to thank all of the sponsors and everyone for attending, and as well, specifically the hosts who put on this evening. 50 years ago, where were we 50 years ago as a Jewish people? It was probably the greatest summer in all of Jewish history. Not since Hanukkah, not for 2,200 years had something happened to the Jewish people like what befell us, the 6-Day War. And we relived it, we experienced it this summer. But if you go back in terms of what led up to that war, it was maybe the worst time in Jewish history. Who lived in Israel at that time? 2 populations. Tens of thousands of Egyptian, Moroccan, Tunisian, Iraqi Jewish refugees who had left with nothing, with the shirt on their back. Many of them, their sisters and wives had been violated, their brothers had been killed. All assets, we're talking about family homes that had been there for 1,000 years, were taken without any remuneration. And as Nasser would get up each and every day in Tahrir Square, and it was broadcast throughout the Arab world, and these people's first language was Arabic, they were listening to Nasser. They were reliving the nightmares of what happened to them just 15 years earlier. Who else lived in Israel? Ashkenazic survivors. If you were a Lithuanian or a Latvian Jew, you were 1 out of 30 first cousins that survived. 6 of a town of 400. If you were a Polish Jew, you were 10 of 100. 2 first cousins of a family survived. A Hungarian Jew, half the family survived. But what happened? They were reliving, as they heard Nasser, what they went through. The Lithuanians, Latvians, and Ukrainians in 41, the Poles, what they went through from 39 through 44, and the Hungarians were reliving the spring and summer of 44. And there was a trauma. The nation was in a depression and a malaise. All the parks in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, they ripped out the swing sets. They were all designated, they were requisitioned for mass graves. Kibbutz Be'eri, which was down on the southern border with the Sinai, where all the soldiers were encamped. And who were the soldiers? They didn't have a significant standing army. They were fathers and husbands who were academicians, who were farmers on the kibbutz, who were mailmen. And they left their families and they were being trained during what they called the Hamtana, while they were waiting and waiting for someone to help Israel. In Kibbutz Be'eri, they dug 2,000 graves, just waiting for the slaughter of what would happen when these boys crossed into the Sinai. And Levi Eshkol sent, you're all familiar with him, the famous South African Jew, Abba Eban, the man who negotiated the mess that got them into the 6-Day War. where he put the safety of the Jewish people in the hands of the United Nations. And when the UN pulled out, and General Amir and Nasser sent 85,000 troops with hundreds of new Soviet tanks into the Sinai, he went on a trip across the world. There were 3 co-signers of the Sinai Accord, the French, and he went to Charles de Gaulle. And Prime Minister de Gaulle, he scolded him like one would a little child. He talked to him with his finger pointing at him. Don't you dare shoot the first shot. Don't you dare disobey my orders. You shoot one shot, that'll be it for French arms. And remember, there was an embargo of offensive weapons by America on Israel. All Israel had were French Mirage and Mystère jets. And Abba Ibn said, but you're the one who guaranteed us. We're not the ones who violated the pact. We're not the ones who brought thousands of soldiers into the Sinai, who shut off international shipping lanes that every nation on the globe is entitled to, except one, except little Israel. What happened? You signed the accord in 56. And de Gaulle responded to him. That was 56. This is 67. Meaning, that was before the Russians provided 1,700 new tanks, provided military attaches, provided 500 MiG jets. And he goes to Prime Minister Wilson. And Prime Minister Wilson is very nice to him. He says, the British empathize and the British feel for your plight, but sold nothing, would not give any arms. And then finally he came to Washington. And President Johnson, who was philo-Semitic, who was a good friend of the Jewish community, but he was mired in Vietnam. He had a mess in Vietnam, and it wasn't just that the Republicans in the Senate and the Democrat didn't want to start a second Vietnam. His own Democratic senators and congressmen, the most powerful man in the West, was the weakest man in the West, and there was nothing he could do. And he tried to have an international flotilla that would go through the blockade of the Egyptians at the Straits of Tiran, at Sharm el-Sheikh. Nope. He couldn't get anyone, not the Canadians, not the Dutch. No one would participate in such a convoy. And Abba Ibn came home broken. And the Jewish people were broken. The economy was in a free fall. There was no male population to work. They were all sitting in camps in the Negev desert, waiting to be slaughtered by the Egyptians. There was one ray of hope for the people of Israel. You know what that was? It was the end of May, beginning of June. The universities here were ending their spring semester. Jewish kids, Jewish boys and girls in Canada, the United States, South Africa, they got on planes. They came. They'll milk the cows on the kibbutz. They'll deliver the mail. They'll work in the makolet, the little stores. It was American kids of all shapes and sizes and backgrounds. And here in Cleveland and in every city throughout the length and breadth of North America, there was emergency funds. There was a smooth young couple in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Their name was Charlie and Lynn Schusterman. They took out a second mortgage on their little home. And they took that money and they sent it as part of the Tulsa Federation. Jews were giving what they had. We were one people in 67. And that gave comfort and that gave consolation because the people of Israel knew that they weren't in it alone. There's one family, there's one nation, and there's one people. We're 50 years later. Those kids today are grandparents. What about today's kids? The reality is, and Rabbi Friedman spoke about this, we just had the Pew survey 4 years ago. Under the age of 45 in America, 63% of us are unaffiliated. Amazing young kids that got up, that spoke. Isaac's peers, and Rabbi Friedman reflected this today, they're not anti-Jewish, they just don't know. You're spoiled in Cleveland because you have the best Jewish community in America. Maybe Montreal and Toronto compared to you, maybe. But we work in Tucson. We work in Portland, Oregon. We work in Atlanta. You're looking at 82, 83% unaffiliated. Those are the numbers. If you add up all the Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox together in some of these communities, you don't get 20%. So what is the face of the American Jew, of their peers? They've not had a bar bat mitzvah. It's not that they can't read Hebrew. They can't identify the letters of the alphabet. And the kicker, they're not anti-Jewish. They just don't know. But they are anti-Israel. The images they see, the exposure they're given, the blogs they read, it's not pretty. That's why we invest 70% of all assets that we raise either for kosher, in terms of the revenues from kashrus, or philanthropy. 70% targets the unaffiliated youth. Kids, Jewish kids, bright, decent, educated kids who were never exposed to the beauty that you know, who were never exposed to the depth that you know. And the portal of entry is a club, whether it is a lunch hour, an afternoon hour, they come in. Might be that the free food is a hook. It might be that it's someone like the Tenenbaums or the Fridners who are warm, engaging is the hook. And they meet other kids. But it goes from a hook to substance. It goes from a hook to depth. And that turns into a latte and learning. And every week they get that free frappuccino. And they talk about issues. Ethical dilemmas, issues affiliated with Israel, the sense of history. See, you and I, no matter what our background is, you and I feel connected vertically and horizontally. You and I feel that we're part of a family that's 4,000 years old, that we have a connection vertically, and that wherever we go, whatever city we're in Europe, whether we go to Israel, it's one big mishpacha. We might be a dysfunctional mishpacha, but we're one family. We have that sense. They don't. You and I take it for granted. They don't. And they get exposed to that. And it's weekends. And it's Skype learning. And it's what's called the Yarchikala. They go away for winter vacation. And they meet peers like them. And then is the game changer. Rabbi Friedman, here in Cleveland, with the Tenenbaums and with the Fridners, but he does the same thing in Columbus, in Pittsburgh, in Cincinnati, Detroit, and other parts of the Midwest. He gets these kids to Israel by hook or crook. TJJ, this program, without any overhead, we sponsor it $3,800 a kid. What they're paying is a fraction of just the cost of the trip. Why? Because when they come to Israel, they're part of something that's 4,000 years. When they come to Israel, they're part of a family, of a nation, of a people. When they come to Israel, they feel that they have a role in the destiny of our people, and they're part of our destiny. If God forbid something like the Six-Day War happened today, would American Jewish teens and college students be packing their bags and going in helping their brothers and sisters? The ones that the Tenenbaums and Fridners are exposed to, they would. And those kids, when they get to the campuses, they're going to be the leaders. No, they're not going to go in the face of the leaders of Students for Justice for Palestine. They're not going to get into fights. But you know what they're going to do? Go throughout the quads. They're going to go through Greek life. And they're going to make the case. And they're going to bring other Jews and connect them to the beauty of a Friday night dinner. Connect them to the beauty of their heritage, into the depth and substance of their heritage. And these young women and young men, they're going to be our leaders. They're our tomorrow. and not just if there's a crisis. If God willing, there should never be a crisis. We have a Judaism that is not just for a time of crisis. It's a Judaism that's for a time of peace and prosperity. It speaks to Wall Street. It speaks to culture. It speaks to ethics. It speaks to philosophy. And it speaks to raising a family. And it's not afraid to challenge the values of Western civilization, to confront them with pride, with strength, with substance. That's what they get from the Friedners and Tenenbaums. And that's what they get with their summer programs, their weekend retreats, and everything that Rabbi Friedman and the whole network provides. And I guess I want to speak on behalf of us at the OU. Our nachas, our pride, is that we have a little pinky. We write a check. That's all we do. We don't do the work. They do the work. But it's our pride to be affiliated with them because they're ensuring Jewish tomorrow. They're ensuring not just our tomorrow, but the tomorrow of our nation, the future of our people. And God bless you. And I want to thank every one of you for partnering with them, for being our partners to make a better Jewish tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Weil and Isaac and Katie and Maury and Sally and Kim and everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming. In a couple of minutes, we're going to bench for anyone who had bread. There's more food available. In about 5 minutes, we're going to have mincha. There's also a dessert table. Please enjoy yourself. And again, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. Have a good rest of your night.